Hello and welcome to the Lowdown. Folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will be started in just 1 minute. Thanks for coming on to the Lowdown tonight. I'm your host, Elson Low, as always. Thank you for starting your Saturday night on a high here with Elson Low. Folks, we will be with you in 1 second, so just stay with us.
And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Good evening, folks. Good evening. Welcome to the Lowdown. Always good to be here with you. Folks, share that link. Share that link. Let's give everyone a chance to see the show. Thank you for joining us on the Lowdown. Thank you for starting your Saturday night on a high here with Elson Low. Folks, we're going to have some fun tonight. We haven't had a show in a couple of weeks because of the local government elections. Now those elections are behind us, and we're able to have go back to our regular schedule. So you should be seeing the Lowdown more regularly. So thank you very much for paying attention to our other programs over the course of the local government election. Thank you very much for voting for the APNU. If you voted in this local government election, and I hope that you did, and I hope that you voted for the APNU. So thank you very much for your support, folks. We appreciate it, and thank you very much for coming out. Those of you who helped campaign over the course of the election. So now we've got an end to local government elections. We'll touch a bit on that as we continue the show. We'll also talk a bit about the fires that we saw in Madia, and then additional dorms and an additional dorm. We'll talk a bit about how that relates to many other problems that we're seeing in Guyana, because these things are really connected by a style of governance. And we'll try to explain what we should expect going forward. We'll look at it from the perspective of the economy, but also from the perspective of the oil and gas industry. So a lot to go over here tonight, folks. Going to be an interesting show as always. I'll try to keep it light, try to add in the humor here and there. I'm actually going to tell you a couple funny stories from when I did a little bit of law back in my high school days, Cape Law. But there are stories that I think might help to be instructive as we look at the calamities that continue to unfold in our country. It's been months and months. The PPP has been under tremendous pressure that has really come from acts of their own doing, massive missteps, and really attempts to deceive the public that the PPP has been engaged in, and that has blown up in their face and has highlighted the extreme levels of negligence that we actually see with the PPP. So, folks, welcome to the show. Share that link. Share that link. Let's bring everyone into the show. It's going to be fun. You know we always love to have fun here on the Lowdown. So share that link. Share that link. Bring everyone in, folks. We're going to have a chat. We're going to have a laugh. It's always good here on the Lowdown. And, we're always happy to be here with you. So, folks, share that link. Let's bring everyone in. The Lowdown is here. We're going to chat about a couple of different topics that are interconnected, and we're going to give you some perspective, folks. So one of the first things that we want to bring up, and I'll tell a joke and or a couple of jokes, and you'll see whether or not they kind of give you a hint as to the direction we're going. So I did a little bit of law back in high school for Cape, and criminal law was one of the areas that we studied. And I always found it was quite entertaining to see stories about criminals who got caught or involved in crimes in the most ridiculous way. And we would always debate what was the motivation behind this particular criminal, because, of course, the motivation informed the type of crime that they're charged with. So one of the things that came up quite often is fires, right? And there's different forms of fire. There's arson, there's fire by accident, fire by negligence, But some of the things that, we keep it light here. Some of the things that came up, I'll give you two examples. One example is where there was a man who snuck onto a ship, a wooden ship. This is an old case, looking to steal some rum. There were barrels of rum stored on the ship. The man had a lantern. In the darkness, he's trying to see through the darkness to steal this rum, and he accidentally, the lantern falls. He accidentally lights the ship on fire, and the rum catches afire, and the entire ship explodes and burns right down, sinks into the sea. He, of course, survived. And the debate at the time was, how could this have happened? Why did he burn the ship down? Was it that he intended to burn the ship down, so it was malicious? Was it an act of stupidity? He didn't understand that the rum is flammable. Was it an act of incompetence? He tried not to burn down the ship, but he wasn't successful at doing that. But one way or another, the ship burned down, and that was the debate. Now you'll see that in many instances and many events in Guyana, various forms of calamity, where you're left asking yourself, is it malice? Is it corruption? Is it evil intent? Is it stupidity? They just didn't understand what foolishness they were doing. Is it incompetence? They're trying to prevent it, but they're not able to prevent it because of how ridiculous their capacity to govern is. Those are questions you have to ask. And as we run through some of these events, each of you can ascribe which motivation you may feel is most appropriate. Now, similarly, there was another case where it was raining late at night, and a drunk man was stumbling along the streets. And in the course of stumbling along the streets, he came across a house, and because it was pouring rain, he broke into the house. He lay down in one of the bedrooms, he lit a cigarette, and suddenly he found himself asleep. Then he was awoken a couple of hours later, an hour later, by something feeling very hot in the room. Now, of course, he had not put out his cigarette, and so the cigarette had lit the mattress he was lying on fire. And so my good man got up, saw the fire, went into the bedroom next door, and went back to sleep. Of course, the house burned down with him inside. And so the question again was this malice? Did he intend to burn the people's house down? Was this stupidity? Did he just not understand that this fire would burn down the house that he himself was in? Or was it incompetence? He thought that maybe the fire wouldn't spread, and so he went into the other bedroom. Now, of course, my suspicion also is that he was just tired. And so he didn't even recognize the fact that he was in danger. And he went to sleep in the next bedroom. I always thought it was crazy that somebody could put their lives at risk like that, witness a fire, and then proceed to go back to sleep. But that's what happened. And so that was the debate. He, I believe, was charged with arson because of his level of negligence. Whereas the person who accidentally set the rum on fire and burned down the ship was merely charged with just regular negligence. It was said that he didn't intend to burn on the ship, whereas the other guy that burned on the house, he had intended, or at least had not cared enough, such that the house burned down. But anyway, I always found those to be two quite unusual scenarios. Because first of all, who, when they're going to go and steal something, accidentally sets the entire building on fire and themselves in it? And second of all, who, when they're going to, when they're broken into a house, sets the house on fire and doesn't leave the house? But anyway, so those are two cases for you to ponder, and they really raise three questions. Is it malicious? Is it stupidity? Or is it incompetence? These are the questions that we must ask ourselves. And as we look at many instances across Guyana, and several that we will examine today, we must ask ourselves, what really is going on here? The sad thing is, no matter what the reason is that these things have happened, the ship burned down, the house burned down, people were affected. And so that is really where we want to kick off proceedings tonight. I hope you are entertained by those little stories, true crime stories of great incompetence or particularly unusual crimes. But we're gonna now jump over. Folks, you know that we love to have ourselves a chat about some memes of the week. So we're gonna jump into some memes of the week here, folks. Look at the first one. This is something that God knows they posted a little while back. Residents of Providence, the cause for your power outage. You ask yourself this: is it malice? Is it stupidity? Is it incompetence? How is it that number one, we continue to have these non-stop various forms of trucks colliding with poles and so on and causing blackouts? But second of all, how can we have a grid that is so vulnerable that every 2 morning you have a substantial blackout? Every 2 morning you see that not only one area might have received a blackout, but a whole vast area. In fact, you often see the entirety of Georgetown, East Coast, all the way to Berbice, East Bank. You often see widespread blackouts in Guyana. And so this is just one example of something that is plaguing the country and where we haven't seen the government properly respond to these issues, including charging those who disrupt the electricity in Guyana for those disruptions. Let's jump to the next slide as we go here, folks. Let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so let's get that nice and big. There we go. So someone says they reported this fallen GTT utility pole that is being held up by a GPL wire 2 days now and no response. Folks, could it look any more dangerous than that? A telephone pole falling there, wire barely holding it up, man. That's a strong wire. And the house there, again, in jeopardy. And you ask yourself, is this incompetence? Is this stupidity? Is this malice? What is going on here? But on and on, we see these types of ridiculous scenarios playing out in Guyana. And you ask yourself, why? Let's jump over to the next slide as we continue these discussion, folks. Folks, here we've got we're gonna loop back to the discussion of incompetence, but we're gonna take a minute here and we're gonna go into local government elections. Just chat about that for a couple of minutes. Of course, we have seen that the local government election, the PP's attempt to win the constituency has not gone. The attempt to win Georgetown and many other towns in Guyana, and in particular the largest population centers of Georgetown and New Amsterdam, has not gone to plan. Been totally rejected, really, in the areas where they thought that they'd be able to make progress. So while I'm sure that they put in a lot of effort, better luck next time, guys. But really what it has indicated is that we've seen from the Guyanese people that, and their allegations of bribery of voters. Of course, we're not saying that those in this picture are involved in bribery, but there are various allegations. Now, one of the most interesting ones is that they were giving out tons of money the night before the election, and they still didn't win in the areas that they thought that they would win. What people did is they, as many people were saying they should, took the money and still didn't vote for them. And so while they put in all that effort, spent all that money, whereas the coalition, whereas the APNU didn't spend much at all in comparison, they weren't able to make any headway. Now, what that says is something that's good for the Guyanese democracy, which is that you can't just try to bribe your way into Guyana, but actually you have to be responsive to people and to communicate to them what it is that you actually intend to do for them and how you're going to safeguard their interests. Let's jump to the next slide as we continue these discussions here tonight. A similarly entertaining slide here, so let's jump to the next one. So there we go. We had someone saying that I want to laugh bad for New Amsterdam. I eat out the people barbecue and ain't vote. Goodness. And then you have someone else saying that they got weak and chest pain from laughing at that particular one. It is entertaining, I will admit, that the PPP seems to have bribed quite a lot of people, or at least there's a lot of allegations of bribery. But they didn't get the votes that they were looking for. People just collected the money. Very, very entertaining. Of course, in Guyana, we believe in, and this is generally the practice in democracies, a secret ballot. And of course, people try to violate that by trying to get people to take photos of them. But that is totally unacceptable. and not at all the direction that we want our country to go. It will interrupt the entire democratic system if we allow people to be taking pictures of their ballots, because then you really can pay people to vote, if you understand me. But what happened here is that people went collect the T-shirt. What is it, 10,000 you get in the T-shirt nowadays? Or I know it used to be 5,000, but here's 10,000 now you get in the T-shirt. Paraded around the place, and then still didn't vote for the PUP. In fact, we saw in Georgetown actually an increase in votes of over 2,000, despite again the APNU not spending a lot of money and not being in power. PUP got a larger turnout, but of course they're in power. They're able to spend that money, provide contracts and so on. Now we're hearing about those very contracts that people are saying that the contracts have been terminated now that they haven't won. And you have to ask the question, if there is a government that actually cares about the people in Georgetown, then why is it that they're terminating these contracts just because they haven't been successful at local government elections? I mean, really, is that all that it's out about for you? Is that everything that it is? Once you win your like, you know, those, I don't know if you recall this, folks, but have you ever seen some children playing cricket in the street? And the person whose bottom ball it is, they get out and they're so mad, they take their bat and the ball and say, going home. And they're gone. And the game is done. Is that what's going on here? Do we have a administration that is childish in the way it's approaching it, despite what it may say? We'll see, but I've got, as I mentioned, first-hand reports that that is what has happened regarding some of these contracts. Just ridiculous. But what we also saw is that across Region 4, you actually saw an increase, a substantial increase in votes beyond what we had seen previously for the APNU, and beyond even the votes that we received when it was APNU and AFC together. We must note that in this last election, it was APNU versus PUP and smaller parties. The AFC did not participate. And so from Region 4, those are, insights that some propagandists would want to dismiss. Say, oh, the PUP made all these gains, without really recognizing that there are quite a lot of excellent things that came out of the local government election, and that indicate that the APNU is definitely on the right track. So those are some things to mention. Now that's what has happened regarding local government elections. We will see how it continues to progress. But we once again want to thank people for coming out and voting on local government elections, because it really is an absolutely vital election, and we have, as a result, been able to see people safeguarded their homes, safeguarded their livelihood, safeguarded by ensuring that the APNU remains in control of these key population centers for Guyana. All right, now let's switch tact and jump across to the next slide as we continue our discussions today. Okay, so now you may recall that there's been quite a lot of discussion around the offshore oil insurance that exists or doesn't exist for Guyana, and the question of a parent company guarantee. Now, really, we've discussed this before on this show, that there's a question of, if there's a major oil spill, whether the local subsidiary of Exxon, Esso, will be willing to foot the bill. EPGL will be willing to foot the bill, and whether the parent company will back them up if they don't have the resources to foot the bill. Now, this is, of course, an area of extreme danger for Guyana, with some estimates indicating that as much as $20 billion might be the annual cost if we have a massive oil spill and the Caribbean is affected. There are also estimates that indicate that as many as 14 Caribbean countries might be vulnerable if there is a major oil spill. Folks, you'll also recall that what has been happening in the oil industry is that the FPSOs have been producing above what is generally considered to be the rate at which they're certified to produce. So they've been pushed beyond their normal limits. Now, of course, that can be done safely and if the right procedures are in place, but it raises the risk a bit, doesn't it? And so to have questions lingering around insurance for an oil spill, when at the same time you're pushing the production beyond the expected level, is, of course, very, very concerning. Very concerning. And that is what we're faced with here today. So, folks, this is something to keep an eye on. But what we want to do as well is we want to ensure that we give you an understanding. We want to ensure we give you an understanding of the we want to ensure we give you an understanding of the trend that this indicates is a key part of what is going on. And there's a trend here that we cannot allow to continue. And so one of the things we want to mention is what the judge who indicated that the who had indicated that the EPA had not done its duty in enforcing these types of environmental insurance needs. We want to give you an indication of what really the judge said, and that to me is the most chilling thing. Is the judge said that the agency, that's to say the EPA, failed to take any meaningful step or any step whatsoever to assess what was provided by SO, the permit holder for the oil and gas activities, purportedly as environmental liability insurance, when it was not in fact in keeping with the permit, in keeping with the conditions of the permit. Now, it is one thing for the agency to be colluding with the company or to be engaging in something nefarious, maybe taking a bribe. And of course, we don't know if that's the case, or we don't know. But it is quite another thing for the judge to say that the agency didn't even check. Didn't even check. And you ask yourself, well, if they're not checking for that, what else are they not checking for? What other acts of extreme negligence or possible extreme negligence are we seeing? Because the idea that the government would just not even check over something as important as oil spill insurance, where Guyana could be liable for tens of billions of US of damages, is, to my mind, unbelievable. And I will tell you this, I've actually been unable sometimes to sleep at night thinking to myself, what fresh madness will be unleashed on us if we continue along this path. Didn't even check. But one of the things I would like to point out to you is, when you look at what's going on with those GPL polls, you get the impression that this attitude of not even checking, not paying any attention, people are calling you, you're not bothered about it. 2 days pass, the poll is barely being held up. You get the impression that might be a factor there, right? They're not even checking, they're not even interested in the fact that there's extreme danger going on there. Those are questions to be asked, I would say, of organizations like GPL, questions to be asked. And really, I think, very alarming. And we're going to carry you through some more of these trends as the show progresses here, because you're seeing it quite a lot. You're seeing it quite a lot. And of course, we send you right back to the two stories told at the beginning. Is it malice? Is there some sort of collusion going on? Is it incompetence? Is it that they didn't really understand how to approach environmental insurance? Or is it stupidity? They just didn't really have a sense that they had to actually take any steps to do their jobs. Now, those are all questions to ask. We don't know which of these it is. It could be a combination of these different things. But based on the judge's ruling so far, it is extremely concerning to hear that on an issue as major as an oil spill, as major as oil spill insurance, the EPA didn't even check. Didn't even check to see if this what exactly is going on with this oil spill insurance. And now, folks, one of the things we also want to highlight, which is absolutely unbelievable, and it is so stunning that I've had to ask multiple lawyers, and all of them are uncomfortable with this wording. All of them are uncomfortable with this wording right now. And when you hear it, you think to yourself, this can't be right. This is too ridiculous. But as I said, I've talked to multiple lawyers and they were all concerned. That same oil and spill insurance that they didn't check, that same oil spill insurance, you'll never believe. But that oil spill insurance, when on the section that says what geographical area the insurance covers, it doesn't say Guyana. It says Egypt. And so that's a classic example of when you don't check. And then what's actually in the document is not what you had expected to be in the document. It says on and offshore Egypt. So it is not just that it didn't check; it's that the document itself is extremely alarming. Now it may be that yeah, there's a way that this won't matter, maybe, but there's also a question as to whether that may be come up to be a matter of an element of dispute if there is an oil spill and if the insurance has to actually be used. And the insurance is not even really focused on oil spills; it's mostly focused on the operations of SOs, FPSOs, and other equipment, and ensuring that those are insured so that if there's any damage, those will be fixed. So it raises again too many questions that we don't want to be asking. We don't want to be asking this about something as serious as $20 billion damages. Whether the insurance is the right insurance. And the other thing that is alarming is that if this one bit of insurance, they didn't check. Do you think that maybe for the other insurance that we have offshore for each and every individual oil well, they haven't been checking? Likely, right? Highly likely that all of the insurance they don't check. And so it could be that Guyana has no active insurance offshore Guyana. That is in effect, has no oil spill insurance. That is in effect. That is a possibility here, which is incredibly alarming. And that's why we're saying that we need to see all of the oil spill insurance. All of the oil spill insurance offshore Guyana. We need to see all of that insurance so that we have an idea that this insurance is valid. Because if the EPA is not going to check, then we have to check. That is what is going on here, folks. That is what is going on, and that is what is so disturbing, has disturbed so many Guyanese. Now, that is one element of it, which is the question of not checking. But another element of it, which is truly alarming again, is that it has gotten to the point where this document was actually revealed by the EPA court filing. And so the EPA themselves provided this document. And you're thinking to yourself, if you know that something is amiss, if you know that you made a mistake with this insurance, are you really going to just provide it to the court like that, where everybody can see that you made that mistake? It reinforces the idea that they really and truly didn't check. They have no idea what's in these insurance documents, and therefore if the country actually is protected. These are alarming things to hear, But kind of unsurprising, right? This kind of laissez-faire, whatever happens attitude. Of course, we've heard Jagdeo say things like, feasibility study, it's a no-brainer. We don't need a feasibility study. It's a no-brainer. We've also heard just recently there was a big controversy regarding the gas to shore project, where they're supposed to conduct a feasibility study for any of the excess gas, and where the company was saying that when asked where's the feasibility study, the company was saying, well, there is no excess gas. All the gas is being used in the operations. Of course, viewers may have jumped to your front of your mind that we are spending billions of US on a natural gas power plant. And so how can you be spending billions of US on a natural gas power plant if you don't have any natural gas to put in the power plant? This, of course, alarmed so many people, and we had to put out a statement to say exactly, try to clarify exactly what's going on, get some clarity from the company. The company then said subsequently that there was gas available and so on. But the reason for this confusion is, and circle your mind back, the company was supposed to do a feasibility study for the remaining gas. If they'd done a study, we would know everything that we need to know about that gas. Everything we need to know. But because there isn't a study, we're left kind of in the dark. And so when the questions are asked, you hear all sorts of foolishness. There needs to be a proper feasibility study done. We have called for an updated feasibility study for the pipeline because we believe that there are cheaper ways to bring the gas to shore, and an updated feasibility study will highlight this. But Is the government going in that direction? They refuse to do that. And so it's this kind of trend of just, oh, whatever happened, happened. Oh, you don't need to govern. You don't need to check. You don't need to make sure that things are happening the way that they're supposed to happen. Let's just roll with it. If it work out, it work out. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Or maybe 600 million US might be wasted. No big deal. You may also recall that when we talk about Guyana's audits of oil and gas expenses, not a key question, a key area. We had to, along with civil society and the media, force the government to actually audit, force them, say that it should be a criminal offense not to audit and all sorts of things. You have to say those types of things. Now, having been put in that position, we have to use strong language. They finally capitulated and said, all right, we're going to audit. But the point of it being, folks, you've got billions of dollars again on the line. The first audit indicated, the audit that they hid, there's as much as 12 or 13% of the costs that are questionable and that we could reclaim. That first audit indicated over 200 million US. Now the existing audit, we could be looking at close to $1 billion US. And these folks are out here saying things like, we don't need to audit, we don't need to check. Psh. Now I again ask you folks, is it malice? Is it corruption? Is it stupidity? Do they just not understand that you actually have to check these things? Or is it incompetence? They meant to check, but they just couldn't figure out how to check. Which of these? You can decide for yourself what is going on. You can decide for yourself what the motivation of PP is. But either way, the country is still put in a vulnerable position. And we're talking about major issues, billions of US on the line, tens of billions. And you're hearing things like, oh, we don't need to check. Oh, we don't need to monitor. Well, whatever. If whatever happen. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. We're going to spend $2 billion, study. Why would we need to study to see how to spend this $2 billion? Why would we need to check to see what's the most effective way to spend the money? No, you have to do that. Let's just spend it. Money, as some guy needs some money makes to spend, right? Let's spend it. Let's spend the money. We're not going to check. Meanwhile, $600 million. It's a huge amount of money that could benefit so many Guyanese. Wouldn't you like that 600 million US, folks? Wouldn't you like to have that? Instead of us potentially wasting it. This is the kind of ridiculous thing that you're seeing from the government. But it's a trend that continues and continues and continues. And so we're going to go on to the next slide here, folks, as we continue the discussion. Let's get the next slide. All right. So now, fire guts St. Angela's Dorm at Carasabai, Government of Guyana statement. Now, we saw that, and this is my comment on it. Who will the government blame now? The government blame on the girl who set fire to the dorm in Mali. Allegedly. Blame, they're going to charge her and so on. But folks, that was a dorm that was heavily grilled. The fire service had warned on more than one occasion that these girls are a fire hazard. The UNICEF had sent a report to the minister to say that the dorms were not suitable and that they needed to be properly upgraded. The ventilation was not good. They're a fire hazard and so on. Minister says, "Oh, I sent it off to the various agencies." But did the minister check to see that what she said was implemented? You see, there's a trend here. Did she check? Now, it could be that she checked and they lied to her. It could be. But this is concerning. How can you have different reports telling you that this may be a problem? And nothing is done. Nothing is done. And what was crazy to me is that you had a fire, worldwide news, Mali dorm fire. And the government's first thought was not, listen, let's shut these dorms. Let's do fire inspections at all of them because there might be problems. The first thought wasn't, let's go and check the other dorms. And look at that. In no time, another dorm burns down. Another dorm burns down. And so it is a pattern of governance, a way of running the country, which is resulting in all of these problems. Just like what the judge said. The agency failed to check. Goodness. The bare minimum, folks. This is the bare minimum. Buildings must have fire extinguishers. How much of a stretch is it for that? That is a big deal. Buildings must have fire extinguishers. Let's go to the next slide, folks, as we continue this discussion. Let's go across to the next slide. So here's another comment I put. Jesus born and meet a fire service, with parts of Guyana relying on bucket brigades. This place is crazy. Now, folks, indeed, a fire service was established since the time of Octavian. Actually, it was a little bit after Jesus was born. But you're talking 2,000 years. 2,000 years you had a fire service. And in that same dorm, let's jump back across to that same dorm there. What actually happened that saved some of the other buildings is that the students formed the bucket brigade and soaked the other buildings and prevented the fire from spreading. But folks, what are students doing having to form bucket brigades? We're supposed to have fire services. Since in Jesus' time they had fire services. How come we don't have that? You mean to tell me that we're really going to accept that Guyana is 2,000 years behind countries? 2,000 years behind Italy, as an example, where the Romans used to live? That we're going to accept that? We're a solid 2,000 years behind? That's beyond belief. That's not acceptable. And you had the mayor of Bartica saying that, the mayor of Madia, saying that they had limited fire service equipment, that the fire service people, there was no hydrant. Folks, let me remind you that the budget last year was 500 billion. The budget this year, 700 billion. A couple of years ago, you had the Breakdown police station burned down. I wrote a press statement as on the opposition's office talking about these fires, talking about the need. Shadow Minister Gita Chananelman also spoke about the need for comprehensive review of all of these hydrants, review of all government buildings. Well, what was done? What was done? Failure to check. And so we're left in this situation where it's like anything could happen. Anything could happen. Who knows? Who knows? It's unbelievable. It's unacceptable. And frankly, it's scary. It's scary. This is the dynamic. And so you see it with oil spill insurance. You see it with fires. You see it with GPL. And you're asking yourself, what is going on here? What is the reason that we're seeing this? And you may say it is malice, corruption. You may say it is stupidity. Just didn't realize it was the issue. Or you may say it's incompetence. They realized the issue, but they weren't able to fix it. Say it's one of these. But ultimately, each one, no matter how bad, leads us to the same problem, which is where we have people at risk, people in danger, a country whose economy is in danger. Over and over and over and over, we're seeing this. It is alarming. It is alarming. And that is what we are observing. Now, as I said, Jesus born and meet a fire service, but in Guyana, no fire service for you. Unbelievable, and yet very much what we're faced with in this country. Very much what we're faced with in this country. Let's go over to the next slide. Next slide after that there, folks. Now, here's the other thing that we want to give you some perspective on. We want to give you some perspective on. And it will be a great way for us to review a few of the issues that we've come across in the oil and gas industry. So this is a letter to the editor. And before I get it, a letter to the editor, the saying that for the new petroleum bill, it should be obvious that 2 weeks of public consultation is grossly inadequate. Need more time than just 2 weeks. Now that is an entire law that is going to govern the entire petroleum industry in Guyana, going to also govern the natural gas industry in Guyana. A whole law, and the government is saying, oh, you only need 2 weeks to look at this. Now, I want to start off with the same letter. I'm going to read for you some of the signatories. Because, some people may say, oh, it's just the hardcore PNC people. It's just a political agenda. The people have signed this are one, Janet Bulkan, next, Alfred Bulai, Andre Brandley, Nicole Cole, Frederick Collins, Karen D'Souza, Jocelyn Dow, the Green Heart Movement, Darshanan Kusail, Colin Clouty, Russell Lancaster, Danuta Radzik, Vanda Radzik, Ganga Ramdas, Red Thread, Christine Samwaru, Ingrid Sarabu, and Josephine Whitehead. That is to say, a wide variety of people from a wide variety of backgrounds with a wide variety of ethnicities have signed this letter. Janet Bulkin, Alfred Bulai, Nicole Cole, Frederick Collins, Karen D'Souza. Then you have organizations like Red Thread. You got the Green Heart Movement. You know, it is not just people, it is organizations as well. And I believe some of these people are from Transparency International as well as that. Lots of people, Danuta Radzik, Vanda Rad, you know, a wide variety of people in Guyanese society saying that we need more than 2 weeks to review this legislation, which is what we have been saying about legislation in this country for some time now. For some time now. Folks, we want to throw your mind back. We want to throw your mind back. Take a second and think about this with us. Take a second and think about this with us. Do you remember the passage of the Natural Resources Fund Act? Do you remember that? Do you remember there being 2 weeks to check that bill again? Even the GCCI, I believe, came out and said, this is not enough time and we need to do better than this. Remember that? I remember calling around to different organizations that they were going to remove from the NRF, remove from that our sovereign wealth fund, and saying, guys, you gotta hurry. These guys are looking to remove you. This 2 weeks thing is a serious problem. And here you have people in civil society saying it's a serious problem. What we have said is that you need to have a standardized period of time for major legislation or major agreements to be reviewed. Standardized period of time. It should be, I believe we had said something like 60 days or something like that, or maybe 90 days. But, a couple of months to properly review things. Not these 2 weeks foolishness. We also said, folks, for this new model PSA, they're going to come with a 2 weeks again, and they're going to rush this thing through. That's what we said. Lo and behold, that's what happened. They came with a 2 weeks for the new PSA. New PSA that could be governing billions of barrels, billions of barrels of oil. This new PSA could be governing that. And, 2 weeks, you look at it. And then afterward, instead of admitting that the 2 weeks is not a long enough time and formally extending the deadline so that people could get submissions in, what you're hearing is, we will still accept submissions if you make them. That's what you hear. We'll still accept submissions. Folks, these people, that's serious. That's serious. But again, I ask you to go through in your mind, one, is it maliciousness? Is it corruption? Is it evil intent? Two, is it stupidity? Do they just not understand that legislation needs time for people to properly review it? And then three, is it incompetence? Is it that they understand these things, but they can only work within a 2 week time frame? What is going on here, folks? Which is it? Is it malice? Is it stupidity? Is it incompetence? Which? But either way, you still end up with this 2 weeks timeline to review major legislation, major agreements, things that are going to affect generations of Guyanese. Just take a quick look. Story done. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And so you've had civil society actors echoing what we have said about the 2 weeks being too short. Echoing what we have said. And I'm sure that they want to engage with the law properly. Now, there are so many issues that need to be dealt with in this law. And I'm just going to give you some perspective on some of the issues. I'm not necessarily going to say what it is that our position is, but I want to give you some perspective on the range of issues that need to be looked at with this law. Because it is not one issue or two issues. It's a wide range of issues that needs to be looked at. But they have no interest in looking at issues. No interest in that. I mean, goodness me. You have something like the audits. I've been saying for ages that needs to be a criminal offense for you to not audit. But at the very least, you need to see some provisions in the law that say audits must be conducted in a timely fashion. But if you don't intend to conduct audits in a timely fashion, I guess you wouldn't put that in the legislation, now would you? We've also had conversations around a petroleum commission. That's something that they've said, oh, they're going to look at it, they're going to look at it. The law even speaks to a commission. But that needs to be fleshed out well, and you need to see a proper petroleum commission established. That's something that we can't just gloss over. We need to have a proper discussion around. There's also a question around what we've talked about on this show, which is some of these feasibility studies, folks. We need to be seeing stronger legislation for these feasibility studies, because what's going on is they're not doing the studies. They're not doing the studies. Folks, we have many other areas that we will bring up. But the point of it being, there's a lot that needs to be dealt with. There's billions of dollars that are on the line, constantly on the line here. Billions of dollars that are constantly on the line. And the government just doesn't seem to understand this. Now, there's even environmental issues that I'm sure that many people who are engaged in the environmental lobby and engaged in trying to safeguard Guyana's environment will want to engage the government on. There are cases right now regarding permitting. There are questions around the minister's ability to license and issue these kinds of licenses. Is it that we're going to see, because they're rushing this through and not engaging with people, different forms of court action taken against the government over these types of licenses and so on, just as we're seeing court action right now regarding permits? Is that what we're going to see? Folks, when you see that the government continues to believe that it just doesn't need to care, that it just doesn't need to take a minute to work on things, to check things, to verify, you're going to get these types of calamities time after time. And so this legislation leaves a lot of potential for problems. Now, folks, who wants legislation that leads to endless potential for problems? Well, if we can avoid that, shouldn't we avoid that? Shouldn't we allow this thing to be properly ventilated? Should we allow it to be properly ventilated so we don't have endless potential for problems? Shouldn't we allow that? Why is it we have to deal with these things over and over again? And I always have to be facing this problem, and that problem, and that problem. Folks, this is what we're faced with. Now, I'm going to, one of the things that we want to bring up, I'm going to see if the operator can pull it up in a second there. If you want to, we're going to bring up just to close out the show. The question again of the Mario Fire and the Commission of Inquiry. But for now, let's look at this next slide here, folks. Just a standard freeway. And we'll ask the operator to see if he can bring up this slide bring up the photo that says that indicates the graphic that indicates how long it's been that we're waiting on a commission of inquiry for the Mario file. But yes, folks, so we're looking now at an interstate, and you may think the state highway. What are you showing me this highway for? Just a standard highway. One of the things I always find to be funny. You remember when 100 people write the driver's test, but 200 people pass? You remember that? Now, if you're driving on a 2-lane road, going in one direction or going in the other direction, while of course you always need to have a driver's license, it's not as big of a deal, right? There was the worst could happen. You have a couple cars pile up. Unfortunately, lives could be lost. It'd be terrible. But folks, look closely at this picture. How many cars you think are in this one picture? 100? 150? 200 cars? Now imagine that Guyana starts to build big highways, right? We want to establish efficient highway network. But the people in here, when you look to the left and you look to the right, These folks never pass even the driving written test. Never pass it. You look to the left, you look to the right. Now, you got to change lanes. But these folks don't know you change lanes. You know, you got to signal and then change lane. And then you see people signaling and changing lane. Or they just drive over. Now, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 lanes. You mean to tell me you're not people driving in this country, not signaling and changing lanes all the time, and you got 7 lanes there? It would be a disaster. A disaster. A simple thing like that. You're looking at just driving down the street. And because of the way that the country has been run, 100 people ride, 200 people pass. You know? And this is yes, it is a problem. This thing's been a problem for a long time. And I was even mentioning that, you know, or I had even mentioned the same scenario. Years ago, I brought this up because one of the things that wasn't understood well is that as more revenue comes in and as we have bigger and bigger projects and more spending, we are now in a position where what might have been a small mistake in the past is now a huge deal. What might have been a little something in the past is now catastrophic. And so whereas not checking might not have been a big deal before, now not checking is potentially disastrous. Now, if you don't check, it's 10 billion US, it's 600 million US, it's these ridiculous numbers, there's $1 billion US over there. $1 billion US is 2 billion Guyana dollars, and you're not gonna check? That's what's going on right now in this country. We've carried our bad habits from the past forward to the point that you hear, no brain, I don't need to study. Potentially 600 million US wasted, but you don't need to study. Bad habits that have been carried over. Now, when you look at something like the oil spill insurance, same thing. He paid in check. Insurance says Egypt. I'm asking lawyers. The lawyers are saying, yes, this could be a point of contention. We don't want this type of wording in here. It's not clear. But he paid in check. They didn't even give themselves the opportunity to say, we have reviewed the insurance and the insurance matches our expectations. They're just in check. And so you are faced potentially with all sorts of recurring disasters because we've moved from a 2-lane road scenario, a 2-lane road country, to a country that could be producing 6 and 7 lanes like this. But we still have the same 2-lane road attitude. Can you imagine? Folks. Now, as we close out the discussion, you know, we want to point out that it's been 32 days and there's no commission of inquiry. That's over a month. No commission of inquiry. Over a month, folks. 90 people lost their lives, burned to death. Goodness. Well, it's 20 actually because somebody died later on. Goodness, folks. Burned to death, suffocated. No commission of inquiry. An entire month passed. Folks, a whole other dorm burned down. And still no commission of inquiry. Not just one dorm, the initial dorm with the 20 people. A whole other one burned down. And still no commission of inquiry. A commission of inquiry, if you think about it in another way, it's just checking to see what went wrong. Checking. But do these guys want to check? These guys are interested in checking? Folks, as we close down the lowdown here for you tonight, I'm going to leave you with a final thought for you to reflect on and for you to reflect seriously on. Now, we're building a high-span bridge over the Demerara River. You know, those bridges that are suspension bridges. right over the Demerara River. You're gonna drive high over it. Ships will be able to pass underneath this bridge. All right. But if you know that this is the type of government that doesn't check, then you have to ask yourself: you driving over that bridge, or you're waiting a couple months to see if anything happens? I'm not driving over that bridge. I'm gonna wait. That bridge gonna settle down before I drive over it. I'm gonna pass it and look, wait and see, and hope that nothing will happen to nobody, as we say in Guyana. Because it's like you don't know what next with these people. You don't know what next. And it is not just, the opposition abusing. It's judges saying this. It's civil society saying this. People are concerned. People are frightened. But the government continues to plow on and on with the attitude that no big deal. Disasters happen. No big deal. Folks, I leave you on that sad note. And I ask you again to consider, is it malice? Is it stupidity? Is it incompetence? But either way, we find ourselves in a troubling situation. On that note, thank you for tuning in to the Lowdown as always, and you have a great rest of the Saturday night.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.